Hello and welcome back to New York Outcast. I'm here today to try to do a quick video for Andrew Faulkner. He had asked me what it took to acquire a firearm in New York State. So his question was regarding a long gun and handgun. So I'm going to try to blow through this quick and should be somewhere else right now trying to fit this in. I did already previously make this and it was horrible, so I'm trying it again. Way too long, so please bear with me. I'll try to make this quicker. To start off with a long gun, basically that's the easiest one, so that's why I'll start with that. I kind of have a list over here as far as the handgun goes, but with the long gun, basically anybody who can pass a NYS check 4473 can basically walk in any store, purchase a long gun, fill that out, everything approves, you walk out with it right then and there. So not much of a difference versus a lot of other places, except for when it comes to private sale. Private sale, there is none in New York State. No private sale as far as long guns, none is handguns. Basically, it doesn't matter if you and your buddy both work on the police force, you cannot transfer a gun between the two of you without going to an FFL first. Everybody has to be ran through an FFL, even if you were trading it from one gun dealer to the next, basically, unless you're both considered FFLs, obviously. But so that kind of covers that area. There's a lot of restrictions as far as what firearms or long guns are available in New York State. I would refer to the New York SAFE Act with that. Basically, anything that looks scary to their definition is pretty much an issue. So obviously that's something I'd like to see dealt with, but I assume I'll probably be moving before then. So alright, so I'll jump to handguns. Handguns, you have to have a permit in New York State. There is no constitutional carry or anything like that. You have to have a permit. You can't even own one without having a permit. So we'll start with that. That's the first level permit. Basically, all counties are a little different in New York State. So I can only speak for my county. In my county, well, all counties, you have to kind of deal with your sheriff's department, sheriff's or court. But my county, I have to deal with my sheriff's department. So basically, to attempt to get a pistol permit, the first step is to go to my local sheriff's department. When I go to my sheriff's department, I ended up paying $10 for the application, which I remembered being 20, but my receipt's saying it's 10, so I'm going to say 10. Put $10 down, you grab your app, and basically you start following the steps of the application. The application is pretty much going to start out by asking a bunch of personal information stuff. Most gun owners are used to, I should state. You know, things, name, address, how long you've lived there, employment, you know, have you been sued lately, all these weird types of questions, anything about divorce, all that type of stuff. So then at that point you would give access to check mental health and criminal records. So obviously they're going to run through that. There's an FBI check. They want to, you know, go through everything. So you have to kind of give them permission to do so, which is expected. At that point, they basically requested me to go to a private company to get fingerprints done, which cost me about $100 to do so. Thankfully, there was one that wasn't too far away, and they digitally send the prints over, as well as give you a copy receipt that you must have with you, even though they received them. But and you also need passport photos. So I was able to get mine at CVS or Walgreens, something, for like $10. So they weren't too bad. You can attempt to take your own photo, but if it's not done to the perfect scale and everything, it turns out to be an issue. So the easiest way is just getting a passport photo here, which I did. So after that, you're going to need 3 references. These references need to be people that aren't anything the law would see as an issue as far as mental or criminal records. Basically, they're looking for 3 legal people are outstanding citizens to vouch for you. So if you have any doubts on your references, I would highly recommend that you try to find ones you don't, because lots of people have been delayed because a reference didn't fill out the paperwork and send it back in. And in New York State, basically it's a shall issue, so once you pay, you don't get your money back. So it's, either way. So that's something to consider. You're definitely going to want people that you can trust to actually fill it out and send it back. So I believe there's a phone call, I was told, and there was some paperwork that had to be sent in. So that I was told by my references. So at that point, when you have all your references, obviously passport ID or passport photos, fingerprints, fill out all the information, you go down, turn your permit in, or turn your application in. Your application will be, when submitted, you have to pay $105.25. That's what I had to pay in my county, basically to turn the application in. So time to pick it up, $105.25 to submit it, basically. So, and at that point, you're pretty much waiting. The wait periods can be quite different. Depends how many applications are being processed. And when I went through this process about 7 years ago, it took me around 8 months for my application to get reviewed and, get word back. So, at that point, if you do receive it, you will get notification. Well, you'll get notification either way in the mail. If you get the notification in the mail that you did get approved, at that point, you need to go back to the sheriff's station. They go through another fingerprinting process, I can't remember if you had to bring your passport photos or you turn them in with your application. I think you turn them in with your application, but needless to say, they cut up photos, they take fingerprints, and they basically build you a permit right there. That permit is a green permit. Basically, the green permit means you can have a firearm in your home, you can take one to your buddy's house to shoot, you can go to the range, you could go hunting if it's within the legal ramifications of that or limitations of that. That's it. Obviously you got to follow New York State rules on defending yourself in your home, but you're allowed to do so in a legal manner with your firearm at that point. So this is a good time to bring up, once you hit that permit in New York State, there is an option where you can opt out. What opt out is basically puts you off the public record. So it's not something that a reporter can look up. Like a case that happened towards New York City here. A reporter ended up publishing everybody's CCW and address and basically a lot of information that most people would prefer the public just doesn't have access to. So to avoid that, you have to ask to opt out. I personally feel it should be like opt in, but that's my opinion. But needless to say, I opted out at that point. Actually, it was a little later when it all came up that we could do so, so I did so. But I'd recommend anybody doing this do so at that point, just so people next door don't start running your name, find out you have a firearm, and then because you're mad their dog poops in their yard, they red flag you or something. Who knows? So there's a lot of different ways to look at it. But so at that point, you're all set. You have a green permit, and now you're able to actually go and purchase a gun. There's a little tiny process to that. It's gotten better here. Basically, you would go down to your gun store, find what you were looking for, or wherever you would like one, pay for it, bring a slip back to the sheriff signs off on it, you go directly back down to the gun store, you can pick up your gun. So it used to be like a 3-day wait. So that has improved. Now we don't have to wait on that, depending on the time, because my office is only open till 4 o'clock. So that makes it tricky on weekdays, and they're not open weekends. So there's your first step, and then possibly acquiring a firearm at that point. Now, if you want to conceal carry your firearm, or if you're trying to get a firearm for work purposes, whether you're a security guard, something like that, then you have extra steps to take at that point. So basically, at that point, you're going to have to sign up for an improved New York State CCW class. I looked around, was able to find one with Rochester Personal Defense. I think it is, yep. And they were pretty good. You know, it was a basic entry class. I personally felt that, yeah, for my money, I wanted more, but that's just me. I'm cheap and expect a lot for money, so. But they run through the basics. It's a lot about the law, things like that. They do offer other classes as well for our area. If you're interested in handcuffs, anything like that, more advanced class, they do have that opportunity available to get familiar with, in a sense. So I would recommend them to other people if you're in New York State. They do travel, so you don't necessarily have to go to Rochester. I didn't. I actually drove close to an hour north of me here and met them at a small gun club, one of their instructors. So, and that's where we took our course. But needless to say, need to contact them or somebody like them. There's a few others. I basically went off availability. If you want to, you know, haggle around for price, there's probably more affordable ones. I think I paid about 180 bucks for my class and needed 150 rounds. I had to have obviously ear pro, eye pro, defensive handgun, holster, magazine pouch, and not be wearing sweatpants was highlighted. So I guess that's an issue. And don't show up with a 22 apparently. So basically follow the rules, handle that. When you go through that, they kind of give you instructions on how to go further, how to actually take the next step, which is different than a lot of places, and I'm sure some, even myself, would be quite upset with. But after you take this class, you have to actually write a letter to the judge that issues the permits and try to explain why you would like one. So, obviously, how you write that letter makes a big difference. Your first thought would probably get you denied. So, it has to be kind of put out in a certain format and worded in a certain way. So, they do instruct you on how to do that at the class. I recommend you follow that because it worked for me. So, if it worked for me, it would probably work for anybody. But basically, so you got your finish the class, get your certificate. They kind of prep you on how to present your letter. You send your letter out. Now you're waiting again. I believe it took about 6 weeks for me to get a reply from the local judge, which I was approved. And at that point, now I have to go back down to the sheriff's office, get printed again. They make a new ID for you, and I was handed a yellow CCW permit. So basically the yellow is basically full access, similar to a police officer. Obviously no schools, federal buildings, and you know, somebody asks you to leave in our state with a firearm, you need to do so, or that's trespassing. But it is not against the law to be in a private facility that isn't a fan of firearms, granted, until they ask you to leave. Then it becomes a, you know, trespassing issue. So, so basically that's, you know, it's a bunch of steps. It takes a while. The process took me, you know, 8 months to get the first step and not too long off the other. So I'll say I was pretty much all set within a year, but, you know, a year is a pretty long time compared to me getting a permit in PA, where I could just hop up, drive to the sheriff's office, certain sheriff's office, but walk in, drop down 20 bucks, give a few references, fill out one piece of paper, and I'm out the door with a permit. So when you look at it like that, New York's kind of extreme, especially since it's pretty close to me. PA is not far at all, so it's kind of a strange setup. But obviously most people are aware of the states, and I'm not trying to get into all that, but hopefully it gives anybody a general idea what it takes to acquire a firearm in New York State. In total, it looks like I spent about $425.25 to acquire my permits. Now again, that doesn't count for the expense of gas or things like Ear Pro, Eye Pro, or anything you may not have had. A firearm, you have to have a firearm to take your class. And in our state, you can't just like loan them out. So basically, you're buying a gun. There probably is some classes where they would rent them. In my area, that wasn't available. So basically, if have a gun before your class. So in the end, on average, if you were to add up all that, I would think the average person would be looking at spending at least $1,000 to $1,200, depending on what you pick is firearm and accessories to go with it. Now, I did call to check and verify that this information was still relevant. I was told it was, and I'd also like to add that New York State itself basically forced me to go register my handguns with them, which was, if I didn't, was going to turn out to be I'm an instant felon. So I'm not exactly sure, because there was a lot of debate over that. Where it stood, I had like 2 days to get it done before I was a felon, so I waited as long as I could, hoping it would get overturned or delayed or something. And needless to say, I ended up having to go submit to the state trooper's office. So that's kind of another part of it, I guess. I don't know if that's still relevant to this day or not, if it's been dealt with or what. Obviously, nobody likes registration, but it is technically another part of a gun permit in New York State. So obviously that was just with handguns, not long guns. So and that process was also free to do so. You could do so online or go right to state troopers barracks, which I did because I didn't want to mess around with the date and they get it 2 days late or something, because my luck, I'd be the one getting arrested. So yeah, hopefully this was helpful and gives you an idea for anybody else out there, or Andrew. So if anybody else has any more questions or anything about New York State or anything I might be able to address, please let me know in comments. So thank you very much and have a good day.